Finance Committee, for February 9th, 2023. Doug, can you do a formal roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Conroy?
Here.
Commissioner Jesse?
Here.
Commissioner Castle?
Here.
Chair Marin?
Here.
Commissioner Woodham?
Here.
Commissioner Samples?
Here.
Commissioner Solomon?
Here.
All right, can we do a salute to the flag? Please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item D, approval for order of agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Blue folder, item E, blue folder items. Are there any blue folder items this evening?
No blue folders tonight.
Okay. See, item F, consent calendar, approval for the affidavit of this evening's meeting, as well as the minutes from January 31st. Is there anyone who wants to remove anything from this evening's consent calendar? Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let's see, there's no excluded consent calendar items. Public participation. Is there anyone who'd like to?
I guess that's my cue.
There you go.
No, we don't have a little cards in. We have a little.
There you go. You're on. You're on.
I'm short, but not quite that short. That's better. Matt Kilroy, candidate for city treasurer. I have something, if the commissioners would be so kind as to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
These are your campaign materials, Mr. Kilroy?
They could be that. They could be called educational materials, is what I'd prefer to refer to them as, since there seems to be a lack of education amongst a number of voters out there, and my opponent in particular. Evidently, last Tuesday night, my opponent decided to make a Zoom comment to city council to the effect that he was the only candidate with financial experience. I was told of this and I kind of chuckled because obviously he hasn't read my, I refer to it as educational material that's now in front of you. And you can look in the back and see some of the experience I have. In fact, it's also amusing because my opponent claims 6 years on the Budget and Finance Commission as relevant experience, but I guess he's unaware that I also served on the Budget and Finance Commission. So I thought maybe I'd educate him on that. But that's not the only thing I've done in the last 30 years. In fact, that's just really a relative small part. And I understand if you were to read that material, you would sit there and go, how the heck could somebody actually do that? Let's face it, some people, when they run for elected office, inflate their numbers, inflate their credentials, like the representative from New York. But I don't need to inflate mine. And in fact, just in a few minutes, somebody basically said, hey, why don't you come down and, show them or tell them what your experience is. And I was going through something on a shelf and was trying to pick out relevant things like, 2 PTSA honorary service awards. Which one's this one? Yeah, 2006 honorary service award for serving as auditor for the PTA. I guess that doesn't count as relevant financial experience, though. Mayor's commendation. This is going back to Brad Parton, if any of you remember Brad Parton, serving as president of the Redondo Beach JCs, which obviously, serving as president, you never have to deal with budgets or expenses or anything like that. Here's my second PTA honorary service award. What year was that? 2009, Mike Ginn. Oh, then we have the Redondo Beach Unified School District Certificate of Recognition for serving on the Measure E Bond Oversight Committee of a bond. Yeah, I think that deals with expenses and revenues and things like that. But the best one is the city of Hermosa Beach, because this is kind of impartial. There's no politics here. It's the city of Hermosa Beach. What have they got to do with Redondo? So if you don't mind,
Chair.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing
minutes.
I was lax in actually in reading the introductions. So each person is limited to 3 minutes. You still have some time, but I just want to at least flag that.
well, on other things, we have a clock that actually.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because I didn't call it out earlier, so I just want to make sure.
Oh, why not?
Just to
But-
work.
Sorry, I don't have access to that clock.
That's a bummer. That's something that probably ought to be,
We're at 3 minutes.
Sure. I'm tracking, so give you extra
You
time.
have a little bit more
30
time,
seconds.
but
well, I'm just want to, read this.
absolutely.
Certificate of recognition issued to Matt Kilroy, council member. Matt Kilroy and his family have been residents of Redondo Beach for 30 years and is a two-term council member for the city of Redondo Beach, elected in 2007 and 2011. I don't know. I think being elected council member is relevant experience, financial, budgets, expenses, revenue, but hey, that's my opinion. Has represented the city of Redondo Beach as a delegate of the Southern California Association of Governments, delegate of the South Bay Cities Council of Governments, chair of the Redondo Beach Measure E Oversight Committee, chair, by the way, Oversight Committee, member of the City School District Committee, and member of the Council Audit Subcommittee. I don't know what else you could have for relevant experience to be the next treasurer. Hopefully, I've done some education of my opponent and the rest of the commission. There's a list of other things, but I'm afraid if I read them, you wouldn't believe it. 20
Understood.
years, Scoutmaster of Troop 655, 3 years involved in AYSO. Oh, no, excuse me, that's Scoutmaster for 3
Mr.
years.
Kilroy, I think-
Leader for 20.
I think you've reached
20
your
years
time
in
limit, sir.
AYSO, which by now is actually 30-plus years.
He didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Mr. Kilroy, I think you've reached your time limit, so I appreciate your time and you coming and addressing that.
Well, hopefully I
Commission.
made my point and educated not just this commission, but my opponent as to, by the way, this is, LA County makes the prettiest, don't they?
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Hopefully you're now educated on my experience and qualifications to be the next treasurer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any other public participation. Is there any comments or anyone on Zoom?
No e-comments and nobody on Zoom.
All right, motion to close public participation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving to item I. Doesn't look like there's anything continued from previous agendas. So moving to J1, City's Treasurer's Quarter 2 Fiscal Year 2022, 2023 report.
Good evening, gentlemen. Neelish Mehta, City Deputy Treasurer, and along with Steve Indeals, City Treasurer, here to present the second quarter quarterly report. Within your agenda packet, you'll see the portfolio summary, reporting guidelines, as well as the report from FHN Main Street, which includes the summary, policy compliance, investment activity report, as well as the economic and market update. And I'm going to be presenting the PowerPoint presentation, which begins on page 77 of your packet. And within the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to go over the reporting objectives and guidelines, policy compliance, quarterly performance, historical book value, cash flow analysis, month-end portfolio yield, maturity distribution, trading activity, interest allocation, and fiscal impact. Key investment objectives to keep in mind: safety, liquidity, and yield. And in that order, it's our role to protect the principal, provide liquidity to cover expected, unexpected cash needs, and finally, to maximize earnings. And then always remember, it's the community's money, and it's our job to be as objective in earning a reasonable rate of return for the city. Usually failures in public investing occur when policies are not clear, they're inappropriate, they're not followed, or oversight is inadequate. So here are some questions you can ask when Do you review the policy? Do you understand the program? Do you receive and review periodic investment reports? And are they clear and readable? And do you fully understand them? This slide goes over the policy compliance for the quarter. As you can see on the right-hand side, we were in compliance with our investment policy for the fiscal quarter. This is a slide on the performance for the second quarter compared to the first quarter. And just a brief overview, we had about $9 million in cash. We had $5 million in money market funds, which is something I'll discuss later on in our presentation. LAIF had about $27 million. Federal agency issues, $47 million. Corporate medium-term notes, $8 million. CDs, about $1 million. Treasuries, about $28 million. Weighted average maturity, 1.72. And our effective rate of return was 1.71%. The LAIF yield, interestingly, is 2.17%, which is, I'll refer to at a later part of the presentation. And in comparison to the yield of the benchmark is 1.4. And then here's a slide of our past performance for the previous fiscal year. Historical book value by fiscal
Question,
year.
please. You talked about yield. That raised a question. What do you distribute to the investors in the fund? Is it it's the actual yield, right? And what yield is that? What is the distributed yield?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
What do you distribute to the investors in this fund? It's the yield, as I understand it. And what yield on this page do you show that yield?
The yield is our return.
No, you don't. You distribute on total return and not on yield. Total return is made up of interest income plus any capital gains. So I guess that's my question. Do you distribute that, or do you distribute just the current yield?
Just the revenue received from interest payments.
Okay, so it's the current
We do
yield.
not distribute capital, no.
Okay, and is that yield shown on this page?
It's shown in your report. We have a discussion in there, the difference between book yield and total yield. So we use book yield, not total.
Okay, it's in the report later.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So this slide goes over the historical book value by fiscal year. So as you can see, December 2023, we were averaged is at the highest point compared to recent years. And then this is a graphical chart of the history going back to 2009. And you'll see that it's been a steady incline, and we are at similar points to 2016.
Okay, I'll say it's not been a steady incline. I'll disagree with that. This is a very interesting chart, especially right now. So if you look at where we're at over the years and you look at the actual decline at this time of year, so basically the closest marker is the November marker, but this ends in December. This chart, look at the lows, all of the November lows. Look how far they drop from those highs. And look how little it's dropped from our most recent high on this particular chart. We started from our highest high, and it's one of our lowest drops ever.
Is that due to increasing yield over time or less?
This is
cash,
the book value of the portfolio, the total value of the portfolio. So that's the whole economic process of incomes, outflows.
But is it less
and the size
outflows,
of
or
the
is it increase because of yield, or is it because of less outflows or lower expenses?
It's everything. This is the size of the
driving it.
portfolio is a function of the total performance of the city's finances. So we're looking at, we had the highest total book value in July. So in December, when it drops, normally it drops quite a bit more. So remember that some of the changes that we've made over the years, the city has, including the bond for the pension obligations. So that's been a big help. In addition, right now we happen to be earning more interest yield than we have in the recent past, but in way back, we've earned much higher interest returns.
Yeah, no.
So that's not a huge part of this, but it's a contributing factor.
I also know the book value actually went down on some of the longer maturities, right?
Well, I can look at those individually, but what I'm talking about is the general picture of the portfolio.
What is it about November that makes it typically draw down so much?
Okay, so that would go to the cash flow report. So we'll get to that. We'll show you that. But that's a good question. And then it also ties in with our redemptions that we have in the portfolio. So we'll get to that.
While you're there about the redemption, is the increase in the LAIF fund reflective of some redemptions that we had?
What do you mean by increase in the LAIF fund?
Between quarters, it went from 16 million to 27 million, it looked like.
Yeah, so if we have, at that time, now we're using the money mark, but yes, when we have redemptions, they go into the LAIF fund. And then we use that for expenses.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Steve was mentioning, this is our cash flow analysis that we've done for this fiscal year. It's our objective. So the sentence at the bottom, we have met the cash flow needs of the city for the quarter and expect to meet the expenditure requirements for the upcoming period. So this just shows a synopsis of our.
Yes, but to answer the question, so if you look at the total debits, so in December, to answer your question about the drop in the total size of the portfolio, look at the expenses in December, total debits compared to prior.
Right. So what is it that we pay for in December? Seems recurring. Right.
You know, I'm not on the expense side. I don't have the list of expenses, but this is,
Would it have anything to do with the pension shortfall
For the pension payment?
the pension payment?
I'm not on the expense side, so I do not have the list of the expenses.
I don't believe it's related to the pension.
This is just the normal cash flow of the city.
Well,
So-
this is a one-year cash flow. If we go back multiple years and looking at the last quarter of the calendar year, as I recall, historically, that's when we have our biggest outflow against the pension obligation.
Go back to the,
Go
go back to the
My recollection
graph.
as well.
the graph,
Right.
this graph?
Yes, so that would explain why it hasn't dropped as far this year.
Right.
Right.
That's great.
So if you look at, so this time of year historically is when the size of the portfolio drops and our outflow obligations are the highest. And this particular year, it's lower than usual.
Because we've been putting out $4, $5, $6 million a year against pension obligations.
Yeah.
So this isn't an anomaly. This is what you would expect because we don't have that obligation anymore.
That is correct.
Okay.
Right.
Well, not only do we not have that obligation, but we borrowed an extra amount in that bond issue over and above what was actually due to CalPERS, and that hasn't been spent yet.
Right.
So that's a deposit that hadn't been spent, and we've got expenses that are lower than we've incurred before.
Right. And in the first year of that obligation, the council elected to pay the interest-only payment,
Yeah.
which was less than the level payment normally.
All right.
So this chart goes over the month-end portfolio book yield over the entire calendar year. January 22, you'll see that we were around 1.4, and we're almost at 2.2 heading into 2023. And then
Do you want to go back just a second, though?
Let me raise a question on that previous chart. Back up to that chart. That's the one I was talking about. I think it'd be helpful if you could, that figure should be shown on the chart that I was looking at when I raised the question, which shows LAIF yield, performance, and so forth. I think it'd be helpful to look to see the portfolio book yield at the same time. So just add
Well,
a line to that chart.
yield. This is the book yield.
No, the table
understand.
that we were
Earlier in the
previously
I'm saying
add it-
looking at
add it
didn't
to the
have this
chart.
information.
Okay. It's in your, it's not on it's not on the slide, but it should be in your report. Let me find it. I'll find it. You may carry on.
okay,
Would it be possible to add it to the slide in the future?
Yeah, sure. of
sure,
course.
yeah, we can take that.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So this chart goes over the maturity distribution of our portfolio. We have almost 50% of our investments we're in between 0 and 1 year and so forth. And this is our trading activity for the quarter. And you'll see that we had 1 purchase and 5 redemptions for the second quarter of the year.
All right, and this is a really good example of safety, liquidity, yield. Okay? So this is the point in time where we have the highest expenses. This is the time when we plan on our redemptions occurring. And so therefore, we were not making purchases. This is a really good example of the process that we undergo.
Can you go back to that last one before that, please?
This one?
real quick? Yeah, just a question on this. So would you say this is indicative of our maturity distribution from quarter to quarter, or is this representative of current yields that are being offered? Like, will we tend to try to lock in things as yields increase, or is it based on just redemptions for costs? How do we come up with this distribution?
Okay, so this is, because of this particular quarter, you're going to see the liquidity in the 0 to 1 year a little bit higher than typical than the rest of the year. So as this drops, you'll see the other, bars go up and down, but we've been making purchases a little further out to 3 to 4 years, so you'll see that go up in the next report. So, but it's similar to this.
Yeah.
Doesn't vary too much, but in terms of the shortest term yields, it's this high on account of the fact that we have so many expenses coming up. But the rest of the question is we don't time the market.
Yeah.
So we're not buying stuff to hold because interest rates are up. We're continually purchasing on the yield curve, just continually purchasing.
And do we come up with these distributions roughly in-house by city staff, or is this based on recommendations from our consultant?
These are primarily recommendations from our advisor. Yep. So we work with him. He works with, I don't know how many hundreds of millions. Yeah, I don't know. But so we work with him. We work within the policy, and then he makes the recommendations. We're not doing the original research, no.
Thank you.
So during our last meeting, we had a question raised by Commissioner Woodham related to interest allocation. So we presented a slide that goes over and summarizes approximately 60% of investment earnings are allocated to the general fund. Remaining 40% are dispersed within various funds. And here are some examples: gas tax, Measure M, local transportation, and so forth. So the methodology behind this: all funds that do not have their own individual bank account are part of the pooled cash balance. Each fund's proportion of total pooled cash balance is the basis for allocating interest income. Pooled cash is reconciled monthly, and interest income is allocated based on the fund's proportionate share of pooled cash by way of a journal entry. Here's a flow chart of the process. Investment earnings are deposited into the custodial money market account at U.S. Bank, and then the interest is registered as revenue in the treasurer's account, and interest is allocated based on each fund's proportionate share of the pooled cash. And finally, the interest revenue is credited to each fund by journal entry. And here's an example of this event. So for the total interest earned in June 2022, it was a total of $158,000, which was allocated to the treasurer's general ledger account. Approximately 60% was allocated to the general fund, and that comes out to $93,000. The remaining 40% was allocated to the other funds. So you'll see this chart on the right that goes over the details about how the percentages are and how the interest is allocated within each of these funds. And then finally, the fiscal impact for the quarter. Interest earned year to date, $952,000. The general fund contribution is 60%, so approximately $571,000 was contributed to the general fund through investment activity. We have budgeted a contribution of interest to the general fund for the fiscal year of $750,000. So we anticipate to be on track for that.
So Nilesh, Steve, thanks for those 3 slides. I think to Commissioner Woodham's point, that is really helpful for transparency for the public and for us to see where all of those funds go, specifically how they're allocated, and a discussion of that item. So grateful for having that in there, and going forward would very much like to continue to see that.
I do not have page numbers on my admin report, but when I'm looking at this number, and you're right, we have not been telling you what the book yield is. I'm shocked. So no one's ever asked that question, and I've always kind of assumed we were reporting on it. If you asked me, I would have told you it was there. So anyway, it's right here. It's in your report on this page, which is not numbered. So anyway, yields. The book yield of the portfolio is 2.8%. We will add it going forward. I agree.
Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation.
Any questions or anyone want to discuss?
This isn't so much specific to this presentation, although thank you both very much for this. This is very helpful. There was discussion previously about getting the monthly report. Even in our last special meeting, we talked about how, since it's submitted to city council, maybe at that same time, it could also be sent to Doug, and then he could send it out to us. How are we coming on that?
Well, let me tell you, the reason I was not overwhelmingly positive with your request is because this body, your body, it has a responsibility to be a good steward of the public trust. Politics come into play, and many of you are good-natured, and well, you all are, I'm sure, but sometimes the information given in these meetings gets used improperly for political reasons. And specifically, at the time, a commissioner who's currently a commissioner now, who was the chairman then, falsified information, took it to the city council, and made a false presentation about the performance of the treasurer. With that in mind, I would have thought that the Budget and Finance Commission would have had some standards and would have maybe had some questions about that, or maybe, I don't know if you've got an ethical standard or something, but at that point, I just realized I give you what is required according to the city requirements and more. So we've done a very good job of simplifying these reports, giving you accurate data and transparency. But unfortunately, a presentation was made with I don't know, some old or false investment policy. It wasn't even the current one. You know, we give you guys the investment policies. We make all these reports to you. And all these discussions can be had in this meeting. But after a meeting and all this information was presented to the Budget and Finance Commission, the then chairman of the commission took information to the city council that was false and accused the treasurer of not following the policy, when we show you the policy all the time, at every quarterly meeting. So with that in mind, it really kind of turned my stomach a little bit, and I just decided that we give you what we give you according to the city treasurer requirements, and if we could give you more, but because of that experience and the abuse and the political side of things, and
I guess I would argue, like, one experience several years ago, dictating what you owe to this commission, to this council, to this community is a little bit of an overreach. and doing the bare minimum of your requirement instead of actually having transparency and a duty to the community seems petty. So I'm confused on why you would bring up something that, again, I wasn't privy to, I don't know, and what someone did or did not do
Yeah.
based on their own personal.
Look, that kind of an accusation is not petty, okay? And the abuse of this information is not petty. What is petty is being political about it. So,
I would argue that your response is political.
no, we've done so much work, on behalf of the Budget Finance Commission. You've asked us, we respond. In this particular case, at some point, the Budget Finance Commission has to take responsibility and have some level of ethic. Excuse me, my ring is going off.
No problem.
So, yeah, that's my take on it. So that's why, but I'm done. It's my last meeting. So you may ask the next treasurer to give you monthly reports. But
So Steve,
I'm not gonna do it.
just out of curiosity, the report that you have been delivering to the city council every month,
yes.
is that not public record?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course it is.
So if any citizen in the city, through a FOIA request, asked for it, they could, would, and should receive it.
Yes.
Why would you take it upon yourself, or why would anyone in city administration take it upon themselves to decide that it's not eligible to be?
I didn't say it wasn't
reported out
eligible.
to-
What I said is this body can become political. And because it has politicized this information, that I've just made the decision, I've done what I can for you. And if you have certain maybe ethical standards and want to uphold I think your duty to the public trust, there's nothing transparent about what we do. So you can't say I'm not being transparent at all.
Well, if you make the decision to withhold information.
I'm not withholding
From a
information.
commission because
No.
you've come to the conclusion that there's political uses of it.
Yes.
That's arbitrary and unreasonable and capricious. I want to thank you for your service for all these years. I would like to move that we receive and file the treasurer's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you very much.
Item J2 without,
Sure, did you guys want to do a roll call
Right.
vote on
What's that?
that? Did you guys want to do a roll
oh,
call
we probably
vote?
should, yeah,
Yeah,
we should probably do a roll
sure.
call. My apologies. Do you want to do a roll call?
Okay. Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Commissioner Jesse?
Aye.
Commissioner Castle?
Aye.
Chair Marin?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Solomon?
Aye.
So item J2 is Lori Akasama here?
Lori's not here. I'm going to take this item
Okay,
and discuss with you guys.
All right, so item J2, discussion and possible recommendation of the approval of a one-year extension with Lance, Saul, and Lungard LLP for auditing service for the fiscal year 22-23 annual independent financial audit.
Thank you. So tonight's discussion and possible recommendation from this commission is a quick discussion on our current auditors, Lancel and Lungard. We'd like to extend their contract with us for one additional year. And the reason for that is, we've discussed this, we're currently in the process of hiring a new finance director. And we feel that the anticipation of the new director coming in March, it would just be an easier transition for that person to learn the processes here at the city, learn how the city audit works. And being that Lancel and Lungard is familiar with us, it'll just be a smoother transition for that one particular year. After that, we would go off and issue an RFP for a new auditing firm. So that's basically what we wanted to discuss and get your recommendations for tonight.
What is, again, have they proposed, like, how much it's going to cost or the process? I mean, is it
Sure,
still
you have
in line
any
with last
questions on
year's? Or-
that? Last year, we did extend them for 1 year because we had the new director at that time. It was approximately $68,000 for that 1-year audit service. We haven't discussed pricing for an additional year, or an extension, I should say, but we anticipate it will be the same figure, about $68,000.
Doug, I noticed that there's no link here to click on, but I noticed in the administrative report that this contract, and the inception was around 2014, or it's been
Yes.
a good 6 or 8 years. And we have, at any time in the last 8 years, solicited bids for this contract to
Yes.
other firms?
We did actually, solicit back in 2017.
Okay.
And that's when we started with LSL. Back then, it was a 3-year contract with an option to extend up to 5 years. That contract, it ended, I can't remember what year that was. I think it was at the end of fiscal year 2021. And at that time, we had our new director coming in. And so we got approval to extend for one more year. And we did not anticipate having to look for another director. And for that reason, we're asking to extend 1 more year just to make a true, easier transition for everybody.
Some continuity in the circumstances that we find ourselves in makes sense.
Sure.
I would submit that the professional contracting has been an issue that we've discussed here, and I think continues to be an issue in the city. There's great latitude for the department heads to solicit and secure contracting without having to go out to bid. They bring it certainly to the approval of the city council and for discussion here for those items that are related to our purview at this commission, but would not like to see another year go by after we have a full-time city finance director again without perhaps, since it's been since 2017, looking into what else is out there in the marketplace.
Sure. We anticipate, the director stick around after this 1 year. And at that time, we would go out for requests for proposals from other firms to make another selection for a new auditing firm at that time.
And I just have one question. Just as part of a traditional audit, the auditor does provide a list of recommendations that I think would be helpful to the financial director coming in. Is that the case with this firm? That they have a list of recommendations typically when they finish their audit?
When you say recommendations, just meaning items for improvement or?
Items for improvement,
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah, when we complete this, we still haven't completed our fiscal year 22 audit. But when we do, if there's any significant findings, those will be listed.
Okay.
They also have kind of any type of like recommendations that they feel we can improve on, or not necessarily improve on, but listing of, let's say, GASB standards that are going to be coming up in the near future.
Right.
They'll like to prepare us for that.
Okay.
We really enjoy working with Lancel and Lungard. They're very willing to work with us. And so for that reason, again, I think it'll be easier for the new director coming in to see how the whole process works.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Motion to recommend a 1-year extension of LSL?
I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommendation for item J2 to approve the 1-year extension with Lance Soul and Lingard LLP for auditing services for the fiscal year 22-23 annual independent financial audit.
Second. Can I add a friendly amendment? If we add that the finance department would, at the end of that 1-year extension, commit to putting the contract out for bid again.
I'd gladly accept that amendment.
Sure. Yeah, we anticipate that to happen for sure. Yes,
Second as amended.
Do you want to do a roll call vote?
sure. Commissioner Conroy?
Aye.
Commissioner Jesse?
Aye.
Commissioner Castle?
Aye.
Chair Marin?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Solomon.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Item K, any member items or referrals to staff? Commissioner Conley?
Before we move on to that, I just want to note there were no Zoom
comments,
comments. Hold on, let me check real quick where I say that. Yeah, no Zoom comments and no e-comments.
Great.
I'd like to make a referral to our staff to repeat the referral that we had at our special meeting, which is to request of the treasurer's office to have the publicly available, otherwise, monthly investment reports from FHN disseminated to the city council, available on our consent calendar for review.
Commissioner Samples?
I have nothing. I have to agree with Commissioner Solomon.
Commissioner Woodham?
Nothing.
Nothing from me. Commissioner Castle?
Nothing.
Commissioner Justy?
Some time ago, the chairman had requested that we show the expenses for the homeless because that money that we're spending has been scattered all over the budget. And if we can consolidate that and as a single line item so we have better visibility, I would recommend to staff that they look into it.
Okay, so are we talking specific just to homelessness expenses throughout the city, whether it's or a particular project or
The pallet home
was
project.
it the pallet shelter project?
Well,
it would be
the issue really expanded to the extent we can get it, everything we're spending on the issue of homeless, the pallet shelter, an allocation of police time.
Other staff resources.
Yeah, everything that we're spending, we should be keeping track of that on a year-to-year basis.
Sure.
There's a real chance that expense goes through the roof. The idea that we're reducing the number of homeless is a little bit foreign to me based upon the data that I see. And the amount we're spending could become onerous at some point in the future if it's not already. I'm not sure that would necessitate changing that or even that we could change it, but we should know about it.
Okay,
I think it would also be helpful to include along with that report any grant funding that we've been receiving, the amount of that grant funding and the longevity of that grant funding
And how it's distributed.
and how it's distributed.
okay.
And I think what we're saying is just basically, there's this expense out there that touches a lot of different departments in a lot of different ways. It'd be nice to consolidate that and see it in one place. In your spare time.
All right, great. The next meeting will be 6:30 PM on March.
we have-
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry, my apologies.
That's okay. I just wanted to thank Treasurer Deals for his service to the city. And though he may not have always recommended with, or excuse me, agreed with everything that may or may not have come out of this commission, at the end of the day, we're all here with a common cause, and that's for the betterment of the city and its residents. So thank you, Treasurer Deals.
Great.
That's it.
All right, our next meeting will be 6:30 PM on March 9th, 2023. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
You finished in record time tonight.
There we go. Bye.